Hello and welcome to the Environment Quarter. I'm Sarah Clark, coming to you from Gladstone on the central Queensland coast, where development is going full steam ahead. This would have to be one of the busiest ports in Queensland, if not Australia. There are 3 LNG plants under construction behind me at Curtis Island, and there's another coal terminal being built down the harbour. Now, not far off the coast from here is the southern end of the Great Barrier Reef. Later on the program, we'll talk to the reef's regulator on whether or not he feels that the World Heritage Site is under too much pressure.
Land clearing for 100 plus years, the impact of the massive storms we've had, the crown of thorns starfish. The reef is under pressure. And some good news from the Southern Ocean.
The toothfish result is absolutely amazing. On the overall scheme of things in the world, it is an amazingly positive result.
The United Nations World Heritage Advisory Body has expressed serious concerns about the Queensland Government's potential plans to export uranium out of Townsville. The state government hasn't ruled it out, the Port Authority in Townsville hasn't ruled it out, and the federal government says it's an application it will consider. But the UN's advisory body says it's an added risk to the Great Barrier Reef, which is already under significant pressure. 50 kilometres west of Townsville is home to the Ben Lomond uranium mine. It may not look like much now, but when it starts extracting ore, the company says it will deliver one of the highest grade resources in Australia. David Sewell was living here the last time the mine was in operation more than 30 years ago. In 1981, an overflow from one of the tailings dams triggered a spill where unacceptable levels of radioactivity were found in a tributary that feeds the region's biggest river, the Burdekin. He has concerns it will happen again.
Excessively high levels of radium in the water is not too good.
With 3 uranium mines across Queensland now cleared to reopen, the state government hasn't ruled out making Townsville the first licensed uranium port on the east coast.
A case would have to be made for the costs of licensing a new port in Queensland.
Adelaide and Darwin are the only licensed uranium ports now. The Federal Environment Minister Tony Burke says he would consider an application for an east coast port.
What I'd have to say is we deal with it according to law, and legally I can't offer more than that.
If Townsville was given the go-ahead, uranium would be transported from the mine through the city to the port, where it's then shipped through the reef. That rings alarm bells for the advisory body to the UN's World Heritage Committee. It's told the ABC this would be a new threat to the Great Barrier Reef and a surprising activity to find in any natural World Heritage site. UNESCO will decide in June if it will put the reef on the in danger list. The advisory body to the World Heritage Committee says this uranium proposal adds new questions which it now must consider. Well, the amount of development along the Queensland coast is not slowing down. That's raised concerns from UNESCO, which next month will decide if it will put the Great Barrier Reef on the in danger list. I spoke to the chairman of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, Dr. Russell Reichelt, about that report and on whether or not he's happy with the amount of development near the World Heritage Site. Dr. Russell Reichelt, thanks for joining us. Are you concerned about the rate of development along the Queensland coast which skirts the Great Barrier Reef?
No, I'm not happy with it. I think the history of land clearing for 100 plus years, the impact of the massive storms we've had, which were a 1 in 100 year type event, but 5 in a row in the last 5 years, the crown of thorns starfish. The reef is under pressure. It's depleted of coral along its southern 2/3, so it's a system under some pressure.
UNESCO meets in June. Are you concerned that they're going to remove the reef's World Heritage status?
I think it would be wrong to judge the whole system as in danger. It's a system under pressure, but it retains all of the outstanding universal value for which it was listed. And it has people along the coast. It had them in 1981 when it was listed. But the thing of concern to me is the accumulating pressures of expansion of activity, and we need to be very clear on how we're managing that. And for instance, with ports, they should strive for zero footprint. They should remain within their port area, and the conduct of shipping to and from those ports needs to be totally safe with no incidents.
With the amount of shipping movements only set to increase, what guidelines need to be put in place to best monitor the amount of movement through and around the reef?
The North East Australian Shipping Plan that's being developed by the Australian Maritime Safety Authority will address the safety of shipping in the reef region. I think we currently have the highest standards of shipping management in the world. We're classified as a particularly sensitive sea area under the international treaty. So we have pilots, we have a tracking system called the Vessel Traffic Service, and we have mandatory reporting. So there is a lot in place now, but I'm also a strong advocate of don't be complacent. We need to, wherever we can step up shipping safety, perhaps we might look at one-way channels. We might look at reducing the number of vessels in parking areas off the ports. So there are some things we can still be looking at.
What about penalties? Should there be penalties for non-compliance?
There's serious penalties for deviating from what we call the designated shipping areas, which again is a feature of this international treaty. The ships cannot take shortcuts through the reef, and the penalties for crashing into the reef are significant, as we saw with the conviction of the captain of the Shen Ning.
Do shipping routes need to change?
I think we should keep open whether we can be smarter on where ships go. I think some of the areas in the southern have been considered for redirection, so it's a possible response. But I would say that the shipping is an important issue and of risk. By far the greater risk is the quality of water running off the land. So putting it in perspective, I would put the reef rescue program as the most critical response we can be making to look after the reef.
The Queensland Government hasn't ruled out exporting uranium out of a Queensland port, potentially Townsville. Are you concerned about that?
I think shipping of any toxic cargo would be of concern, but really we'd have to see a proposal and we would have to consider that. It would be considered first under national environmental law by the Federal Minister. So I'd be waiting to see what is proposed.
Does uranium ring alarm bells?
We're concerned about shipping of any hazardous or noxious substance, and so we would take it very seriously.
What's the worst case scenario that you could expect out of the UNESCO findings in their meeting in June?
I would like the committee to consider their recent report and the assessment of very high standards of management in the reef. The scale and the complexity I think exceeds by far the coastal pressures in terms of maintaining our values and World Heritage status. I don't think it warrants World Heritage in danger listing, but I do expect them to draw a lot of focus on the forward planning for great expansions in some of these coastal areas, and I would share the concerns of unconstrained developments that do run the risk in the future of putting the World Heritage values in danger.
Dr Reichelt, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
The process of extracting gas through fracking divides opinion across Australia. Well, the controversy exists around the world as well. In a remote part of South Africa, a push by energy companies, including one from Australia, has met with strong resistance. Ginny Stein reports.
It's early morning, and with rare recent rain, South Africa's semi-desert Karoo region, known as the land of great thirst, is bathed in its finest light.
We have about a third of the country's livestock, be it sheep, cattle, goats.
But it's what's underground that could change this landscape forever. Untold wealth in the form of natural gas. And with it, the promise of jobs in one of the country's poorest regions.
People will grab anything that will look like they will have some income.
But to get to the Karoo's underground gas reserves needs water, and lots of it.
We are a water-scarce area, and we want water for the development of our town.
Farmers who have spent decades managing a scarce resource fear environmental damage will kill their industry.
Water is the lifeline, is the life of existence, really. So without water, you can't run any operation, and therefore communities are going to be affected.
3 international companies have already lodged applications to begin exploration drilling. But here in South Africa's rural heartland, resistance to fracking as a means of extracting underground shale gas reserves is growing. Many who stand to benefit from the economic boost that an energy boom will bring don't want it.
They will be coming in, flying out, and there will be no long-term benefit. There will just be downside.
While the government says it will shut down exploration if it's environmentally damaging, the lure of jobs in a dirt-poor region may well prove too tempting.
And finally, a story of success on the high seas. Less than 20 years ago, the toothfish industry faced being wiped out by pirate fishermen. At the same time, environmentalists were devastated by the thousands of albatross that were being killed on fishing lines every year. Well, their unusual collaboration has seen a complete turnaround for the albatross and the industry.
It was once the target of fishing pirates who were pursued across the Southern Ocean by Australia's anti-poaching force. The Patagonian toothfish poachers were so efficient, it was feared they could wipe out the fishery. Instead, it's the poaching that's almost been wiped out.
This was all about collaboration, the two groups working together and achieving lasting positive outcomes.
In an unusual partnership, environmentalists and the industry campaigned together to encourage consumer boycotts, increase surveillance at sea and ensure more controls in ports.
The toothfish result is absolutely amazing. On the overall scheme of things in the world, it is an amazingly positive result.
Martin XL represents the world's legal toothfish operators, and he's thrilled all the hard work has paid off. Australia's two fisheries, off Macquarie and Heard Islands, have received Marine Stewardship Council certification for sustainability.
The fisheries have come to this international standard, the global benchmark, if you like, of sustainable fisheries, and which is great to see.
The wandering albatross has also benefited. Once, hundreds of thousands of birds were killed on longlines and extinction was likely, but a change in fishing techniques has seen their numbers return. So, toothfish is back on the menu. The main markets for Australia's $50 million catch are Canada and the United States. After years of being labelled a fish to avoid by America's most influential fish rating agency, it has just been rated best choice.
From a market perspective, we will be able to keep catching those fish in perpetuity.
It's hoped the respect between the two groups will continue through difficult negotiations over setting up a marine protected area in Antarctica's Ross Sea.
That's it for this program coming to you from Gladstone on the central Queensland coast. If you'd like to see more news, go to abc.net.au/environment. I'm Sarah Clark. See you next time.